Okay, home is where the practice is. So we're going to start a restorative practice with a cobbler's pose. So I want you to have a rolled up blanket and then a bolster lengthwise on top of it. So you kind of make this lift for the spine. It's kind of a spine, it's a spine ledge, you might say. And when I sit in front of the bolster, I do want my sacrum to feel like it is touching, but there's a belt around me, right? So I've got a belt and I brought it overhead and I bring it around my thighs. And some of us might take the belt and make a bit of a twist with it. So we cross the belt. I think I'll be okay with it just like this in case I need to get out. So you're going to make it snug. So place the belt so it's around the eyebrows of the buttocks, and then it scoops forward around the tops of the ankles, and then you add your blocks. Regardless of your flexibility, use them, right? You'll be happy that you're not overstretching your SI joint. So when you lower back, see if you can get a feel of the length in the center body, okay, and let the spine release back, and then adding your sand to the ribs. So I'm going to add my sand across the ribs, and with that reach of the sand, you can go across, you can go from heart to belly, you can go sand free. Okay, you can also sand across the feet. But begin with that articulation of the support from the props. If there's too much bulk under your neck, you can always slide the top blanket back. I don't want you to feel like you're rounding your neck. So it kind of depends on how the bolster supports you. So if you have a really good firm bolster, you're probably not going to have a rounded neck as much. Mine is a little mushy, so I might have to get rid of this blanket. But I don't want to have my neck get a little more rounded. Stretching the chest via the arms out onto the ground. And as you let your breath begin its focus, feel the moving path of the inhalation through the nose. But so clearly does it move into the chamber of the ribs. As you find your bones in a specific layer of support here, because I'm hoping you feel supported by your props. If the blocks seem to be too much pressure, remember you can tilt them so they kind of contour and support the reach of the thighs. And I tend to feel like the reach of the legs is the inner leg, but it's just as much on the side of the leg with the blocks. And just simple gathering attention on the even rhythm of your breath. Tune into the pace of your heart, slowing down. And then find a position so the arms are actually comfortable. They're not overreaching. They may have a comfy bend so that they're stretching down from the collarbones, the clavicle out. Even if your elbows are really close to your sides, you can achieve a nice length in the front of the body and the heart. So you could try moving the arms a little closer, feel the breath, moving the hands a little bit farther out. Now let's take these moments here when the inhalation is 3 to 4 counts through the nose, and exhale out through the mouth, let it go. Inhaling slow. And empty the lungs. So that movement of the core chamber, right? You can feel the movement, especially if you have that sand. Actually, you feel it either with or without. But that's the movement of the diaphragm. That's what's that you feel moving, right? When you feel the sand kind of lift and lower, even though it doesn't go very high, right? It can only go with how how strong you feel with your breathing muscles, right? And the flexibility of those is likely, sometimes challenged unless we hung out like this a lot. So we're going to kind of access a little bit lower in the abdominal muscles, closer to the hip flexors. So you're going to slide the sand away. And as you unbuckle, we'll bring the knees to a feel of motioning by using clearly the attachment at the top of the thigh. So just be cautious, slow. You don't have to make fast moves. You're not going to win the pose if you do that. But we slide the belt so it's not around the backs of the legs. And then I try to keep that rib space open. Okay, and then I press into the back of the pelvis, although it's pretty subtle. If you push back into the pelvis with your body on this kind of ledge with the bolster, you're likely going to feel that pressure into the kind of in the sides of the abdominals close to the flexors. So I would recommend put the hands beside your hips, palms pressing down, and then guide the knees in. And when you slide the feet towards your buttocks, you might find that there's a block stuck there, which is okay. If you have a ball, place it between the knees and squeeze the ball and relax the grip. If you don't have a ball, use a block. This is fine. So you can alternate squeezing and release. So kind of feel the nuances in the arch and how the pelvis has kind of this, it feels kind of, it's hydrating, right? One idea in working with the circulation or the hemodynamics in our practice is kind of bringing blood flow into the areas, which helps with the whole process of circulation, waste removal, CO2, all those things. So next time you relax the grip on the ball, I want you to reach for it and place the ball or block besides the upper outer left thigh and reach the right leg away. If you've got a wall close, you'll be stuck at the wall. But reach the right leg away, lift up through the foot, and then cross the right ankle to the left knee and press that ball into that left leg. So when you lean your knees to the left, you're going to let them shift over. I like to use the block sometimes on this one, but I reach for the right knee with the left hand, and the side of my left foot is relaxed. So the bottom foot, which is along the ground, that one, you want to be on the side of the foot so that you can work on that circulation, right? The range of motion is probably what it's appealing towards. And again, keep it simple, right? You don't have to do anything, radical with the arm, the right arm. Sometimes less might be a little bit more intelligent with loosening up these holding patterns, assuming you have any of those. Okay. So when you hold on to that right knee, feel, how do you pull? What kind of muscles do you work when you hold on to the knee? Try to feel like the front upper chest area has a little definition when you hold the knee. Not just the arm. It'll get tired pretty quick if it's just the arm that's doing the pull. Okay, now I feel the right hip a little bit, and my hope is that I can stay with this for a few more moments and maintain the hold. Of course, the hip is still feeling it. I'm not going to pull the leg any farther to the left side. Okay, now when you come back in center, just take a moment, let the knees, they're still in the same frame, right, into that figure 4 frame. Just let them rock back and forth. And see what that mobility is like both directions, left and right. So the lower abdominals, that kind of lower abdominal pressure, I want it to go side to side. So it's not just prolapse, just kind of pushing down. You're trying to stretch both sides of the abdominals, lower abdominals. Okay, now when you change the crossing, okay, just switch it. So left foot lifts, you might reach to the wall, you might just cross the left ankle to the right knee. Now I place the ball to the right side, upper outer right thigh. Some of us, when we place the ball, okay, you can't see this right side of me, so I'll just show on this left side. You might, if the block wasn't in the way, okay, you might have the ball, so you kind of almost push it under towards the rear. Likely, if you have that support, right, it feels like this intelligent, kind of engaged action in if the ball's pushed under a little bit in the abdominals. I have to purposely feel my right foot kind of slide onto its side on this side, which is my dominant foot. So it's interesting how it has its programming in our daily habits, and this is not what it's programmed to do, except right now. So feel the hip area needs to be just right across from each other. You're not trying to tilt. The left buttock is not off the floor. That's important here. Hold on to the left knee with the right hand. And be sure that left buttock, like the back of the pelvis is not swinging up. I suppose your rear flesh is a little bit up, but I don't want you to roll to your shoulder. Use the bolster. So the left arm can be passive. Some of you like to activate the arm. Okay, so feeling where the torso broadens out on the inhale, movement chamber of the ribs, expansion and center. Just resting the face. There happens to be more props over there on the right side that are holding you, like you can kind of feel a block. It's okay to leave it. Maybe it was meant to be there. Now be sensitive to the low back, right above the pelvic area. That we want that to feel like it is broadening, right? We're not trying to shrink wrap that area, but in fact, we're focusing on bringing more blood flow, more circulation to these zones in our body that might feel kind of crimped up. So breathing wide, exhale, letting go. Now relax the grip on the knee and shift. We'll take a bridge pose. So I think as you uncross on this side with the left ankle, bring both feet, I would say about hips distance. So it's probably a little bit more narrow than you were expecting. And if you have a blanket under your head, you'll slide that back. And then you'll add a block of the lowest height under the pelvis. Because what happens is if I go too high, then my neck is going to curl, right? If I have this up and then I have to round my neck to do that. So just a low block and then extend the legs. You might be right up against the wall on this one, huh? Okay, so reach, and if you do have the wall there, it's kind of excellent because I push and I have to kind of rebound into my hips. So I'm not trying to make this area dull in the hip zone. I want to find that there's resistance. If you're not at a wall, that's fine. You can work with reaching down through your heels. The wall is nice, so if you want to get to a wall for this one, if you're already close to one, just shift your props for these moments. And then taking your, well, if you can find your belt, take your belt, bring it to your hips. Okay, front of hips. Hold on to the belt so it doesn't have to be buckled, but you have kind of a two-layer, right? It's together, so it's a little bit more defined. And be casual at your expansive reach with the hand. So it could be wide, it could be shoulder distance. And then as I move my belt towards the ceiling, just straight up over my heart, I'm going to try to push into my feet and stretch the arms back and use gravity to find that. Now, if there's a pinch in the shoulders, you're not comfortable with it, you don't go so far. If it's just the circulation surge, right, you're not on pins and needles with it, that's okay. But if it hurts, right, you would back off and make the belt motion just straight up, okay? Let's take that lengthened breath through the center. Good. Now, as you do a little bit more bend of the knees, a little bit of bend, right? You don't want them completely hyperextended here. And then feeling as you pull, you'll move the belt straight up towards the ceiling and then walk the feet in. Okay. Now, as we lower the belt down, we're gonna do a different kind of creative blend here. Have the belt unbuckled nearby, but we're gonna go to sleeping sage. Okay. I want us to do some strong core work and then some inverted patterns. So it's a specific set. So when I push down into the feet, I want you to lift your hips up, slide the block away, and then feel how you coordinate the twisting. So my center body lowers down, and I do want to encourage that natural arch of it is kind of the arch of the pelvis, isn't it? It's the natural curve at the base of the spine. Okay, now the base of the spine is going to stay with its width. So I'm going to roll left, and I'm going to turn to my bolster, and I'm not going to have a blanket on top because this bolster moves a little too much. So it's alive. But when you turn and you lean into your bolster, you let your head turn to the side. But the issue is if you have a blanket on top, some of you it'll be fine. If your bolster's really firm, you might be able to use the blanket on top. But if I have my blanket on top and I feel my neck making kind of this rounded pattern, it's not a good thing to do for my neck. So I'm going to encourage you to let the left knee go up towards the bolster. My left hip, well, actually kind of greater trochanters at the short end of my bolster, because it is the short end of my bolster on the edge on the left side. Right leg is back. You can use a ball if you need to. This pose is not as ball relatable for this, I think. To me, this is too much pull in my lower back with the ball. Okay, so when you turn sleeping sage, you're going to let the ribs center down, blanket or no blanket, and see if you can let the hands stretch out to the sides and turn the palms open. Relate to the ease of the circulation in your spine here. Let your head relax. Most importantly, let the eyes maybe close here. And just feel where the breath can kind of broaden into your back. Relax the belly. And just feel its natural motion, especially in the back layer. Right? We have the lower abdominal layer. It's straight up from the hip flexor, right? The psoas motion here. But feeling that lower back kind of have a little hydrating motions with the breath. Okay, now if you're trying a lot with your arms and you'd rather just hug your bolster, you can also do that. If you don't like the blanket setup, another thing you could do is put a block underneath the bolster. It could be nice, especially if you have one of those really flat blocks. You have one of those sitting around somewhere. That's helpful. But see, this is kind of nice for me because it's firming up the bolster too. And so when I lean in, I don't want a bolster that's too, too saggy, because then I don't find that support for my chest muscles, right? So even though it doesn't look like I'm stretching my chest here, there is a bit of it. So take the last few moments here, about another 30 seconds, where you can feel the twist. Feeling there's a rotation through the spine. Okay, now this is an easy way to just exist in a twist. I could be here for a while and even find relaxation. So we want to find a way to educate our, have some muscle memory though in our abdominal muscles and our spine. So when I push to come up, feel that you push and you lift and maybe you turn the heart kind of so it's just rising up over that bolster. You're twisting. Okay, so we're gonna go all the directions in the waist now. So I've got this turn, my weight is on my left hip. Okay, so we come up and turn. This is a kind of a newish sequence. So if you're not sure where we're going, it's okay. That's kind of how it rolls here. Okay, so you'll have your bolster horizontal. And you'll take your blankets at the back and you'll unfold so that they're folded. So I would just fold them, stack them if they're already kind of push them down. So they're probably the height of your bolster. And then when you sit on top of your bolster, your left foot will be forward. Let's see, so we were turning to the left, okay? So we're gonna take our left foot on the block, okay? And it is flat, low height, don't go higher. I don't know if that would be even helpful if I had my foot higher. Something to test out, huh? So sandbag option on the right thigh. So it's kind of a little bit of a hip hugger sandbag. It's very high up on the thigh to support. Okay, and then I want you to get a feel when you hold onto your belt now that you reach behind you and let it just be that. I hold a belt behind, not trying to do any exaggerating motions with my chest or overdo my shoulder work. But even if I hold something behind myself, right? You've done this probably with your hands, but if you do hold your hands, this rolls in. So what I want you to do is use that hold of the belt to get the shoulders to motion back. That's all. And if you don't like using belts and you want to use your hands, okay, so be it, but it's gonna roll in. Okay. Maybe somebody can do that. When I tilt, right, my ribs up, so just gonna enjoy breathing. It's kind of labored breathing in some ways on this one. So even if my hands hold the belt and they're touching the blankets, this is a little more stressful than if I didn't have my belt, right? I'm doing proper zoning here in the chest muscles, okay, for breath. Okay, so give it a moment here when that right thigh is trying to center down. If you need a ball under the right knee, that's okay. Okay, tilt the right ear down to the right shoulder. Stretch the left side of the neck. Come back center and left ear to the left shoulder. Stretch the right side. Okay, now when we come back in center, okay, study how, the solar plexus, this area and below, and we're not trying to suck the belly, and I want you to feel like it's in a comfortable reaction with the breath. It basically reacts to in and out breath. That's it, so it moves. Okay, let go of the belt and cross the left leg over the right and twist to the left. Right elbow to left thigh, left hand back to the blankets. Press with the right arm, but also that right side of the side of the spine. Right, so when I turn, I'm using my back to twist. The challenge is the neck kind of rounding in, right? And you don't want to create like this rounded space in your upper spine. So your work is on simply lifting the heart, good, And then working with the waist turning. And it's limited, meaning turning, it's already turned, and that's it, right? That's your range. So enjoy that circulation that is starting to kind of peak in the abdominal organs, that squeeze and soak. You can always relax the breath. When you come back to releasing the right arm from the left leg, come back to the front. The work is in upright, not uptight. So when I come back center, I'm going to hold under my left knee, lift up the heart. Okay, and some of us, right, this neck might still have this contour. So what helps my contour of the neck is my chest opening, right? That's the focus. That's why I have us do this, is that chest opening affects the neck. So when you take the sand off the right thigh, I want you to make sure there's nothing behind you that you don't want to put your leg on, like a belt. Take pigeon pose. Left leg stretches back, right hip. And let's try this one where we have our blocks. So we're going to get a couple blocks. We're going to have them at the second height, maybe the lowest height if this is too much on your lower back. And feel the forearms on the blocks and try to reach the chest forward. Okay, so it's not a sleeping pigeon pose as much. And the reason being, we're focusing on how the chest reacts, the arch in the spine. Right, of course, if you need to take a different shape because it alleviates discomfort, you do so. And if it's simply a stretch on the breathing muscles, and it's a bit of a tangle right through the ribs. So keep it simple. Inhale, expand. And exhale, center. Remember, trying to get the hemodynamics working, right? Blood flow into these areas that might be kind of dormant. Kind of reviving them. And when you get that circulation into the area, right, it helps with that removal of waste. Okay, now if the back leg is pretty comfy with this, give it a few moments of kind of honoring that reach of the left thigh. So it's hard to involve the leg in any certain special choreography, the back leg, but feeling that inner, that kind of choreography you can't see, right, your organs, feeling where the weight is on the right seat, the sitting space, in the natural arch. Yeah, so the front of that left thigh elongates. Okay, now bend the left knee. Just give this a moment. If it's too much on your knee or it seems to cause some friction in the low back, just don't. Okay, but a moment for some of us, bending the back knee so the heel draws towards the seat. And probably the heel doesn't go straight in, right? For some of us, it'll be a little zigzaggy there. You'll feel your right hip though. Okay, now coming back with the left foot. Now when we shift, I want you to move your blocks aside and we're going to come around to that left thigh going forward and we'll switch the sleeping sage side. So I want you to slide down off your bolster and you'll put your blocks off the mat and then turn to your bolster and I'm going to go one blanket underneath. Now remember, we had the blankets rolled right on the last side because we came out of cobbler's pose. So you probably want to make a little bit of this tube, but it depends on your bolster. Some of you might be comfortable with a block under your bolster instead of this blanket, but get cozy with your bolster. You want to get close and you're going to turn the waist via the touching of the hands on the ground and that twist. Right, this is such a good angle for the spine to kind of educate the circulation, basically the rotation. And when you lower down, try to stretch the chest by relaxing your head to the left. And the hands could be straight out onto the ground, elbows down, or you could hug your bolster. And if you decide you want that block under your bolster, if you tried it and it just felt like a nice support, then just slide it under. Yeah, it looks like it's kind of, it looks like it lifts it a little bit, but once you use your body weight onto the bolster, yeah, all bets are off on that, right? Because it's releasing down. I'm not holding back on my body weight. I just let it go. Yeah, use the bolster to coordinate, right, the circulation in the center body. Feel the twist. And just simply let the arms find where they're comfortable and breathe. Back body moves with the breath. Now for these final moments, feel if the weight of your hips, just putting that weight down, if it feels like there's a stretch that comes out of the hip when you just lean into it. There might be some stretch in the low back. And some of these shapes are very soothing to the back. Even though they're activating, right? They're twisting, right? They're movement hydrating between the vertebrae. Okay, now try to come up with a feel in your back as if you're taking a forward bend, like you're tilting. So when your hands are down on the ground, see if you can let your chin move like you're doing cat pose. Right, so it's kind of a different suction through the back. Okay, so now when you come up, you're gonna actually, you're looking back at your bolster, maybe you've already moved on, but you're gonna take your bolster and turn it horizontal, and then add your blankets like we did last time. I like what's coming up on this one. So let's stack up our blankies. And then when you come up to take that seat on top, you'll cross it. That left foot is going to scoop in towards the bolster on the floor, right? It's not on top of the bolster. That would be awkward for my ankle, but I would probably try it 20 years ago, not now. Stand on the left inner leg, and then the block under the right foot. Now you can tell if you have your foot on the ground, and then you sometimes you have to help it get up there. Then you take it up. It's a different reach on the side of the right on the fibula, right on the side of the lower right leg. Yeah, those are really interesting where they attach right into the foot, you know, so try to let the foot flex. And this time you'll take your block, the other one, not the one under your foot, and reaching the block up. Okay, bend the elbows. And then as you move the block behind you, right, your hands hold the block wide. So I think if I had my block at the next setting, at the second setting, that for me would be harder, okay? Because then I'm going to have to kind of tighten into my tricep. So have the hands holding the block wide. Lift up the elbows. I know they can only just go. They just bend and that's it. But, you know, feeling, even look at in your peripheral vision or look to each elbow and just kind of notice the curve at the arm below the elbow. Right, that's going to be curved. So when you put the block towards your upper back, you might feel something stretching. Okay, lift up the heart. That's the key, is lifting the heart. So if I was to put my block on my back, I notice kind of where the curve is in my neck. So I want you to work with the chest open. Now lift up the hands with the block. Okay, now let's put the block down and just roll the shoulders. Just hands on your legs or on letting them dangle. It's kind of hard to let them dangle here, but you'd be surprised the things you can find out about your ability to self-soothe a bit. So feel the shoulders rolling. Okay, now with that movement of the chest up, okay, you're going to take the right leg, cross it over the left, so it's on the other side. The foot is on the other side of the left knee. And then I twist to the right. My right hand reaches back. You know, probably the best way to do these is with your eyes closed, because you can really sense, and you might need to look at the screen, but really sense the rotation. Okay, that's in multi-layers, right? It's the first layer from a muscle, then it's the next layer. So it's too much to discuss, I think. So let's feel that we turn, and you're holding onto the right knee. And then you could hook the left elbow to the side of that right knee. Mine is not on the knee at all, it's above. And when I push, you know, that's pretty defiant. That stuff is defiant, right? The quads, the upper right above the knee. It's a shield. It's quite shieldish. So when I turn, I feel kind of abdominally on one side a little different pressure than the other. So my purpose here is to just breathe. And on the exhale, feel the turn. Inhale, feeling height. Exhale, feel twist. So each inhale, ideally there's a focus of upright, and the exhale is kind of a spiraling. You know, keep the leg pattern the same, but you'll turn the waist back forward and hold the right knee, lift up the chest. Okay, and then feeling when you relax the grip, you'll take the sand, move it away, and we'll take the right leg behind us. And when you stretch back with that leg into pigeon pose, you might go back to the two blocks under your elbows. You might decide you want to start with this kind of almost an upward facing dog positioning for the arms. Upward facing pigeon. Okay. So right thigh is kind of stuck with the pelvis here. So this is an interesting pinned position for the thigh. So I can't really let my right thigh go slither back and forth. It's stuck. So use the gravity, use gravity here to help me out. So if I lean down to my elbows, right, there's more hip stretch. No reason to try to get your left foot farther in front, just let it be. Let it be close to the bolster. And sink downwards. Okay, and the next, you know, this part of the set is going to be this interesting evaluation of our kind of not necessarily ribs, but the connection below the ribs and the abdominals. Even if the area is kind of passive, especially like in this pose, you feel like the other areas are rigid and have restriction, but the belly can just kind of let go. So we're going to use our extremities to kind of give us a little bit of vitality there, you might say. So let the right thigh, your rudder back here. You can bend through the back knee. If it cramps up your hamstring, stop. Okay, you don't have to continue. But if you start to lift up the back foot and you go, oh, this knee is different, or maybe it feels somewhat okay, I'm going to start to curl the foot in. Right, you want to keep the left thigh still bending and grounded on the bolster. The left buttock. Okay. So feel the great lower back strength here. Okay, now lower the back foot, and as you get a feel of that reach of the heart forward, okay, we'll walk the hands back in. This time we're gonna kind of flip our pose. Okay, pose flipping. All right, so bring the right leg forward and let's turn. So we're gonna face away from our wall. And I want you to be either with a blanket under your knees or no blanket and no bolster, right? So if you need something under your knees, if your flooring is not that cushioned, then you can put a blanket right here under them. But we'll come down to our hands, stretching out the fingers, the feet touch the wall, and we'll round the back into cat, chin to chest. Inhale, see if you can move the heart a little bit downwards and feel kind of that reach through the chest muscles into cat. Okay, but noticing you can let the eyes be open or closed. The knees are apart. Simple focus on the movement of the spine. Basic. Okay. I imagine that this movement in the torso is pretty good. It's like finally getting some activity, even though it's just movement of the pelvis and linking it to the spine. I know they're best buddies, right? They're together all the time. Pelvis and spine. Okay, now next time you reach the hips back and under, you're going to push the hips back a little bit. Hands are pushing. Bring the hands out to the edge of your mat. And then as you feel the fingers stretch out, you're going to reach the chest forward. Inhale, arching. Okay, and exhale, stretching the hips back. If your knees start to slide out, if you're on a blanket, they might. Try to make sure that they're not all the way out to like a frog pose. That's not ideal for your hips. So you want to find that when you come back this next time, that you're going to hook the toes under, really active, lift up the knees and reach the heels up at the very base of the wall. If you got a little baseboard, it's kind of ideal. But the heels are up, the hands are wide, feet are a little wider than hips distance. And such a great pose for the spine. I know it requires some arm strength, right, and flexibility of the upper body and the lower body. Okay, but the spine really gets a nice circulation event here. Think about blood flow to the brain and the heart. Okay. Let's keep that reach of the hips back and up. Inhale and exhale. Come down at any time you need. Okay, now we'll bring the feet away from the wall, and I want you to walk a hand back at a time and then bring the other foot away. Walk your hands back to your feet into Uttanasana. Be sure your heels are not at the wall because you'll take a somersault if they are. You have to have some distancing here. I used to use like a bolster as a distance between my feet and the wall for this one, but I'm not going to pull my bolster across. You could do things like have your block, right at the base, so you have a good distance. That's also relatively useful, but we're all different lengths though, so it's got to be individualized. And as you lower down your head, you only go so far, right? You'll hold on to your elbows and you'll let the spine savor this position. And this is a great one for the circulation into my abdominals. And there's going to be quite a focus on the abdominals, as I mentioned, for a little bit of time. So, right, increasing like the pressure, the circulation. Let the weight of the head go. You might even feel the core band close to your thighs. Maybe even the thighs are touching somewhere in that side of the waist. You know, the thing that stretches that center body is usually the breath, right? The breath is quite supportive of moving that fabric in the center. Okay, so you'll release the grip and you'll walk onto your hands, take a crawl, have your feet walk back to the wall, and then as you lower down, grasp onto your bolster. Okay, let's let the bolster be straight down forward. I tried this both directions many a time, and I sometimes like the bolster this way for this. Okay, so it would be here, elbows wide and down. It's definitely a different pressure on my lower abdominals. It kind of depends on how you're feeling, right, in your stomach area. So when you lower down the bolster that touches the front of my thighs, I like that too. I just have to get the bolster to use it as my pose, right? The props are part of your poses. It's not, you don't just randomly use them, they're part of it. So lower down in crocodile. So my feet are at the base of the wall and my big toes are touching the base, right? So they're at the floor, but my foot is up the wall. Okay, this is an interesting one if you're working on alignment of lower leg parts. You could separate the knees. Again, you could go farther away from the wall if you don't like to touch your wall, that's fine. And then let your forehead touch down to the skin of the top of the hands, right to the wrist. And feel how just the body weight downwards and then the movement of the ribs, they kind of span out and up. It's kind of a nice flow in the abdominals. So just breathing. So there's no twists in this one. There's no torque in the pelvis. But the change in the breath and then changes the nervous system, and then we're simply putting our bones in these shapes, but it's quite related to releasing holding patterns. Okay, so we are going to shift, and I want you to have the feel of your abdominals they're lengthening, so your waist is reaching. So if you lift your head up off your hands, instead of pushing your jaw forward, it's naturally tilted like you were trying to look down to read something. Maybe you are reading something. Okay. But I want you to get a feel of the knees are apart enough and the bolster is supportive. So there's already this arch in the back, a little bit. Okay. Try to lift your head up so that creates more spine security on the spine. And then bring the hands down and they're wide besides the bolster. The elbows might kind of fling out to the side, but press and lift up and lengthen through the front of the legs here. So you might push into your feet and feel that stretch through the torso. I want you to feel the torso stretches. The waist is stretching. Okay. So there's a little bit of pressure in the kidneys. This is important, so that low back, the low waistline. Okay, now as you bend through the knees, you're gonna come back to table, cat pose, chin to chest. Gently lengthen to neutral. And then you're gonna turn the bolster across the mat and have just that, if you have 2 blankets, you go back down to 1. I don't think anyone's got 2, but get one on the side of that. So I want you to turn so that you're going to lie back on the bolster and upward facing forward bend. Urdhva Paschimottanasana, right? So we've got our blocks. We need them. We're gonna need these for sure on the side. You got your sand, you got your ball, and maybe a belt. Okay. Now lower back, get your sand so it's on for the ride here. It's already on. You don't have to drag it across the floor. And we're gonna lift up the legs. So what's important here is that the top of the sacrum is firmly on the bolster. Okay, so that's the base of my spine. It's firm on the bolster. Got that, check. But you want to bring the proper pressure into the abdominal organs here. So I don't intend for you to use a sandbag here. Okay, my intention, okay, is to help you find that circulation here in the, I think it was the corgans, the core, the lower core. So what's often taught is the sand is at the back of the legs, right? So if you have a sandbag that has the handles, it's kind of helpful because you can pull the handles and support. And it's not trying to get your feet overhead. But when I have this circulation, remember the sacrum is firm on the bolster. The spine is already lengthening here. But that interesting pressure in the abdominals, right? It's not, you know, completely crushing, but you feel it. So if you can bend the knees a little bit, that's fine. That's probably better than trying to swing the feet overhead, because that will increase that pressure. Another way this is taught, probably just as often, is to use a blanket instead of the sandbag. And I just kind of roll it up because it's on my lower ribs to my abdominals, not on the back of the legs, and then I bring the legs in. See, it keeps a nice height with my legs. This is probably taught more often. The sand though is interesting, but you might try the blanket so it's below the the cross fibers of the ribs where it intersects. It's way below the sternum. Okay, so it's in that abdominal area, right around the navel area, that you place the blanket. It doesn't have to be in a tube. It could be flat, so it's not as much pressure on your abdominals, but you're increasing that circulation, that blood flow into the organs. Sand is either here or a blanket is here, not both. It's too much. Okay, so if I bend the knees a little bit, soften, and feel that stretch through my back. Arms are down by the sides, they're open, maybe a little bit lower than straight out. And see if you can trust the gravitational direction here, the opposite of prolapse. Great for the pelvic floor. You don't really have to force the position further because gravity will increase it just to be in it. Time and gravity. Or it's gravity and time. Or the gravity of time. Okay, take a few more breaths here. Feel the resistance, especially on your back. Okay, now just the last few moments here, just feeling how the weight rests on the mid, back, and the backs of the shoulders when I'm in this pose. That's another part of it. There is weight resting there. Okay, so as you bend through the legs, okay, you're gonna shift if you have a blanket here, shift that way. If you have the sand on the back of the legs, shift that. You don't need either of those for what we're doing right now. You're gonna take a belt, so I think we do need it, unbuckle it, and feel the knees in their natural lift up. So that, again, the sacrum is pressing onto the bolster. And I put the belt under my right foot, and as I lift up the leg, I want you to let the left leg relax down. If it touches the wall, it's kind of nice for this one. And you'll hold the belt with the left hand and cross the right leg to the left. And you do the sensation kind of crawl. So when I hold onto the belt with the left hand, There's sensation that moves from my leg, my hip, and hopefully I have my sacrum where it started centered on the bolster, so my upper body just stays open. The bolster under your pelvis is really nice to have for opening up our chest. It just keeps it wide. You don't have to effort. Okay, now feel when that leg crosses over to the left side, that pull with the left hand. Okay, see if you can merge breathing, slow, exhaling. Now we're going to let the right leg go into a circular pattern. So when you bend the right knee, bring the leg so that both hands are holding onto the belt that's under the right foot. And then start with small circular patterns, holding the belt, circling the leg up. Rather than go, oh yes, I see my foot is circling, must be doing it right. It's more that you're feeling at the attachment at the, well, where you feel it right now is like, it's at the hip, it's down in the front, the top of the thigh, but it is higher up in the mid body. Leg attachment, of course, but find some resistance with the hands. Maybe you walk them up higher towards the foot. I don't imagine anyone's going to hold their foot here, but feel the motion. Okay, and then last, you're going to feel the leg is a little bit closer towards your upper body. Just pull it a little bit back. Okay, now slide the hands down. Bring the left foot up into the belt. And as you push your feet out on the belt, you got lots of slack, so you could keep reaching, but sense that the legs have motion and they're probably flexing through the feet. Now just notice if the legs have any challenge with that flexing or kind of pointing pattern. So feel the flex, feel the pull with both hands firm. It's an inversion. Now, instead of focusing on bending the knees, see if you can focus on sliding the feet together. So my legs stay lifting up towards the ceiling, keep lifting them. I know they're not going to suddenly bounce up and touch your ceiling, but you're pulling and you're guiding the feet closer together. Okay, now feel how you pull on the belt. Elbows might be down by touching the bolster or the floor. And let the legs shift forward. Kind of rally up for the lower abdominals here. Lower abdominal rally. Okay, make sure the neck stays resting down, right? The upper back might try to arch. So you're going to push up with the feet and then come back to center, verticality, and lower the right foot down. Remember that leg can just kind of take a vacay. It doesn't have to do anything right now. You could touch the wall. Right hand holds the belt that's under the left foot, cross the right leg to the left. So I like to use the wall quite a bit on this one, even though doesn't seem like it does a lot. I feel some kind of continuity with the circulation from the leg up into the hip. You can always try bending the bottom leg and see if it's any different for you. So I think you want to feel marked awareness, kind of that just keeps the cumulative effect of this sequence. Okay, your left arm could be open, your head could roll to the left or back into center. Slow breath. And now actually feel when you start to pull on that belt a little firm, push through the heel, and then see if you can start to move the leg up. Now, starting to move it up is the cue. And once you get there, reach for the belt with both hands. Your right foot should be pointing up now, the bottom foot, and then circle. Holding, rotating. But kind of imagine that rotation starts curiously from the sitting bone area. You could get the same action if you're standing on your feet, right? Because you got all these body parts that are stacking onto them. So it's nice to feel the movement. V reclining. Okay, so make that motion now. We're going to go into a little more vigorous motion in the hip. Okay, so slide the right foot in, so the bottom of the foot is down, and then bend the left knee, taking the belt off, and bring both knees to each other up. I guess you could do both knees to each other with feet down. But lift it up so the back of the pelvis has that bit of flexion, a little bit of rounding. Okay, take a ball. So the knees are apart now, the ball's between them. And then let's get our blocks so that they're going to be right to the sides of the short end of the bolster. Okay, so the blocks, your feet can relax here. The block height is probably going to be different depending on how your hip flexibility feels today. I start them low, but I might end up needing them to go up if it's too much. I suppose the intelligent action there would be start them up versus starting it too hard. But we'll see. These are going to be my bumper blocks to start. So the knees go side to side and feel when the angle of the waist moves. And try to go slow with it. So speed is not your friend on this one. So there's movement with the pelvis. Now your rear's got to go up, right? It's not going to stay, except for the bottom rear when you go to the side. Okay, so use the pressure into the bolster. Like, there's body awareness that's pushing into the bolster. So feel what's pushing and then what's right above the push that's twisting. These are great patterns for twist for very supportive of my back muscles. Reclining twists are better than seated twists, right? They're smarter. Okay, now next time you go in center, I don't think you're going to want a ball, so you're going to put the ball aside. That was merely a spacer. And then we'll take our sand carefully, put it across my lower abdominals, kind of middle actually. And then I'm going to move my knees both to the right and then add my sand to the exterior left thigh. Okay, so this is, sometimes we do our reclining twist with a little bit more kind of reach with the leg, if it swings. This is a little more compact, and I don't think I should overanalyze exactitudes on things, but keep it simple. So I got my sand on the side of my left leg, my knees are to the right, they're not stacked. I can't get my knees stacked because of my pelvis, it's not reasonable. But I have my block up on the second setting. If I was to lower it down, it would be a little more stretch in my waist, and then my ribs would kind of push up. So you want to find that it's comfortable for your ribs. You don't want everything poking around. You don't want to poke around those ribs. You can slide the block a little bit out to the side as long as you're still on it. Stretch your left arm open, and your head can maybe turn to the left. To me, that feels too much on my neck. So I'm going to keep it center a little bit to the left. And let the right arm either open out or rest it. You can even rest it on your torso. And just feel the breath. You can just see where it ends up. Maybe it's slightly on your torso. And maybe the hand touch is comforting. It's your hand, so it feels a little different, but in some ways it can be quite therapeutic. Some of these poses, just using the hand to touch onto where you're breathing. Feeling the expansiveness. If any of this is too much, you can always eliminate the sand or even the bolster, because the bolster is going to add the quality, like that quality of intensifying that circulation. Feel the left leg. Try to slide a little closer to the left inner knee, slide a little closer to the right inner knee. See what happens if you can work on the suppleness of the waist. If this is the area to work on, right? The waist, the ribs, this stuff helps the spine, right? That's clear. And if you're on your back with just a little bit of height, maybe you even use less under your head. No one wants to round their cervical spine more. So anything you can do to lengthen that out. Let's start to bring the shape into the center. So we'll slide the sand to the belly and bring the knees. I push the sand down a little bit so it supports my lower back. And so it's like, that's kind of helpful. Centers my back a bit. And then my knees go left. I'm just going to take it slow. So ease them over to the left side. Yes. And then place the sand to the outer right. Could be hip, it could be lower down the IT band. If the kind of the medley of pose motion gets to be too much, back off and start over again, right? You can bring your knees up and then slowly guide so that you can notice any of the quirks, right, in your response in your nervous system. If something tells you it doesn't feel right, you got to respond and see what can be helpful. Yeah, I like the action of trying to get my right leg towards the left, getting closer knee. But the farther I push it, then my hip responds. It kind of feels almost like it flares a bit. So again, you don't want any hip flares. Okay, but you can feel how the ribs, you can feel it warm though in the hip. It's nice to do these deep stretches because it's warming right into the joint, definitely into the muscle belly. So when I turn my head to the right, yeah, maybe this side works better for that rotation. And be on any of the sides that you're on, thinking of the whole body though, not just that one segment. Yeah, let's give it, if it's too much, right, again, you can always go without the sand. You can go without the bolster on these crossovers. If you need to take a break, that's fine. And feeling in the final few moments, what you can offer is two things: the knees going left and the ribs going right. You can do those two actions nearly at the same time here. And I just feel your head maybe roll. You can only help on this one. Okay, now when you do shift here, I want you to first feel that right knee get a little closer to the left. Maybe it'll go. Okay, Slide the sand off, add the ball again, okay? So we're gonna start to get closer to our legs up in a moment. So I want you to bring the knees to squeeze so the feet go towards the buttocks. Bring the knees back center and take the ball, place it between them. And now we'll bring the knees in towards the chest and then push the bolster down away from the back of the pelvis. So now your feet might touch onto the bolster. And you're gonna lift up the hips into bridge pose, but alternate lifting and lowering through the spine. Even though you're gonna feel like you're emphasizing the glutes, I want you to lift up the hips, stretch the arms overhead. Exhale, lower the spine down. Okay, feel that length that occurs through the spine even when you lift the hips up. I find that part to be the challenging feel, not just when I lower down the spine, right? Because you put the weight into your upper back and the backs of the shoulders when you lift up the hips, right? And it's pretty balanced, even if you don't use a blanket, which is optional. It's truly optional here. Okay, almost like a little comfy. Okay, next time we come up, okay, I want you to come up with the hips lifting, bridge pose. Okay, now feel what it's like to push into the ball. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to have your arms on the floor, but push into, squeeze the ball. Okay, keep squeezing it. And then as you lower the spine down, relax the squeeze. Bring the knees to your chest. And then taking a block. And I want you to put the block, so actually let's scoot, if your bolsters, like if your feet won't touch the wall on this next one, you want to slide a little bit down towards the wall. Slide everything with you, right? Your blanket under your head, so it's right up at the tops of the shoulders. And now we're going to lift up. We're going to do our two final poses are going to be inversion. So the idea is getting that circulation into the endocrine glands here, right? That's a big part of them. So when I lift up, the hips go up, I slide my block under, so it's at the second setting, or some of you might stack two blocks. You could have two at the lowest setting, stack, stack. I think it's just stack. And then we stretch our feet to the wall. Oh, I'm just about close enough. Okay, I'll move my bolster farther down, see how that works. All right. Yep, that works better. So you want to feel like something fills up what's under you, so that there's like this empty space. Use your bolster. Don't worry how it looks, it's how it feels. So this frontal hip length, and then it kind of drops down into the abdominals. This is great stuff for this hip flexor, psoas release party. Okay, blanket option. I seem to like the blanket today for these, not always do I, so this is a different thing. But if your feet push into the wall, even if it's just the balls of the feet, press, open the chest, feel the arms are down. It's a funky place to be with your arms like this. I find it to be really challenging. So I usually use my arms the other way. I push into my hands, hold things the other direction, everything from the front with my arms. So feel how each of your upper extremities, how connected they are. We're really connected to the collar, scapula. I mean, it's so connected, but it's kind of a stiff connection. It's different in the pelvis for some of us. So I want you to feel how your elbows touch the ground. Your hands might kind of turn a little bit out, a little bit. They're not going to pivot in. Lift up through the ribs. Just let that be. Let it be so simple before we do legs up. So you feel this definition, solar plexus, this lift up above the navel, open. Okay? And then that circulation drops down to the thyroid, the parathyroids. Okay, now feeling that you kind of level out, You're gonna walk the feet to the edge of the bolster. Some of you might have your feet on the wall, I suppose. Lift up the hips, push into your feet, lift up the hips, slide the block out. Spine lowers down. All of your back is lowering. Okay, before you push your knees in, I want you to then go to legs up the wall. So rock to the side, get all your goodies, right? It could be an eye pillow, it could be an extra blanket or two, but you're gonna take your blanket so that you will have one under your head. Your alternate blanket could go on your belly, okay? Yeah, and you know what I've been trying to work with is the idea of the bolster having a block between the wall and the bolster. Okay, I'm trying to find that I work towards liking this one. Of course, my teacher teaches this most often, so there's a little bit more stretch in the torso if I have this much width. But we're used to the bolster at the wall, I know, so you're probably not going to be too interested in it. But you can always try it. The block is not flat, it's at the second setting, it's right next to the wall. You can try it if you don't like it or you don't want to try it, it's okay. But I think we should learn things, okay, that are different. So we're going to pull the sandbag near the side, and you're going to sit up on. Now this is funny, right? Because this is a block. Maybe none of us are doing this, but you're going to lean. And what's nice is that my rear has a whole gap here to be in, right? It's like a whole, there's a spot for my rear. So when I lean to the side, I'm going to swing the legs up. And what I'm doing is I have my back and my pelvis on my bolster, not on my block. My block is merely a spacer. It's not for my rear. So the idea is creating that space. So this is easier on the hamstrings. And if you go, oh, my hamstrings are so open, I don't know if I need to worry about that. Well, this is about relaxation, right? It's not about flexibility, much of this restorative. The sandbag can be tricky, right, on this variation. I will say it's not the same thing. It's a little challenging. You can do it, but it's different. And the circulation that ends up in the adductors and the groins and the lymph drain, it's easier. I just find it completely satisfying. So you can have a blanket across the core. Make sure it's firm, right above the navel. Press down. Open up the chest. And if you're close to the wall with your rear, you can still work with that. Some of you might be. And then resting your eyes with either an eye pillow or your natural eye pillows, which are eyelids. And filter the air in through the nose and out, letting go. Just feel that simple motion of opening the chest. Even though the sacrum is quite firm on the bolster, there's circulation out from the sacrum and up right to the kidneys. So taking care of that circulation into the vital organs. It's a great one for that area, being upside down. Try to stay with breathing through your nose. Strengthen the filter of the nostrils. Breathe out where you're comfortable. Maybe it's through the mouth, maybe it's through the nose. But do breathe, both directions. Start to feel that strong inner connection. Maybe it's to the abdominal zone, maybe it's higher up in the heart. See if that path of movement from the legs actually gets up towards the heart. It does keep it a little bit more open. It's not a really rounded heart in this position. Let's give it just a few more moments. Really savor the inversion internally. Can't get many things done with your head upside down, huh? You know, feeling where the back of the pelvis is pressing. Likely my visualization could be more expansive. So even if I feel like it's really physically controlled in the center of the back of my pelvis, when I bend the knees, you got weight on them, right? So on the feet. So it takes me a moment to really fill up that space. So if your blanket's on your core, you can leave it, you can slide it off, but do get rid of any sand. And then hold the backs of the legs and let the knees rock side to side. Feel a little bit of movement. Pass the focus over to one side. And when you're comfortable to come up, if you feel like you need to hold your knees in, do so a little longer. And then as those of us are ready to roll up, we're going to come up to sit at the bolster. Now, if you've got the block in between, you're going to have a little different challenge here for sure. Okay, because you're not going to have the wall right behind you. So you've got more work to do without the wall. If you've got a wall behind you, good. Lift the shoulders up and roll them back. Take a few moments of lifting and shrugging and rolling. And finally feel when you roll the shoulders back, that little bit of space from your shoulder peak to your ear. Bring the hands up to palms in front of your sweetheart. Now let's connect our breath, our focus. Take a deep inhale. And with exhalation, bowing into that space behind your heart.